We are here to honor a great leader and a great Britain. He was born in my constituency and is buried at Blaydon Churchyard in my West Oxfordshire constituency. And a full 50 years since his funeral, when the cranes along the Thames dipped low, when the streets were lined with those vast, silent crowds, the sheer brilliance of Winston Churchill remains undimmed. I'll never forget the first time I heard that voice. I was at my grandmother's house as a young boy, and I was looking through a box of dusty old things, and I found some vinyl records of those great speeches. And I'll never forget putting one on the record player and hearing those phrases boom out. Victory at all costs, victory in spite of all terror, victory however long and hard the road may be. Let us to the task, to the battle, to the toil. And of course, I think the one that struck me most as a young boy, some chicken, some neck. Churchill, the orator, made a big impression on me as a boy. And now that I'm Prime Minister, there are so many Churchills to respect and admire. There's Churchill, the global statesman. Go to China and you remember it was he who first recognized the People's Republic. Go to Israel and you remember he helped to realize the dream of a Jewish homeland. Go to Pakistan and you can imagine him fighting on the frontier in the Malakand field force. From the Battle of Omdurman to Britain's acquisition of the H-bomb, there stretched nearly 60 years, and throughout it all, he was at the heart of events. Then there's Churchill, the bon vivant, the bottles of Paul Roger in number 10, the practice of taking his cabinet out for lunch at the Savoy Grill. Sadly for my cabinet, this is not really the current regime. And then often overlooked, there is Churchill the reformer. This was the man who pushed for prison reform, who championed old age pensions, who introduced labor exchanges for the unemployed. Churchill believed that a nation was made great, not just by its military might, but by how it treated its poorest and frailest citizens. And that is another important part of his legacy. But if there is one aspect of this great man I admire more than any other, it is Churchill the patriot. He knew that Britain was not just a place on the map, but a force in the world, with a destiny to shape events and a duty to stand up for freedom. That is why in 1940, after France had fallen, before America or Russia had entered the war, he said this: Hitler knows that he will have to break us in this island or lose the war. If we can stand up to him, all Europe may be free, and the life of the world may move forward into broad, sunlit uplands. Arguably, May 1940, those few days, that vital decision, was the most important moment in our nation's long history. A time when Britain saved herself, saved Europe, quite possibly saved the world. And we were so incredibly fortunate to have at that time a leader so strong and so resolute. Churchill was confident that freedom and democracy would win over barbarism and tyranny in the end, and it did. And with every affront to freedom in this century, we must remember that courage and resolve in the last century. 50 years ago, when Sir Winston Churchill was dying, my older brother was a tiny baby, and my mother used to wrap him up some days, put him in his pram, and wheel him along to Hyde Park Gate. There, along with crowds of people, they would stand outside that red brick house as a mark of respect. Such was the affection, and half a century on, such is the affection. History has been kind to Winston Churchill, not because he wrote it, but because he shaped it. He left a Britain more free, more secure, more brave, and more proud. And for that, we must always be grateful to him.